They looked at her wings and called them fake. They looked at her idea and called it a prop. When Captain Nia Cross arrived at Gate 42, she wasn't just there to fly the plane, she was there to save it. But a power-tripping gate agent and a prejudiced lead flight attendant decided she didn't look the part. They blocked her, mocked her, and called the police to have her arrested for impersonating a pilot. Big mistake. They didn't realize that Nia wasn't just a captain, she was the chief Czech airman for the region. And she wasn't just boarding. She was conducting a surprise audit. What happened next didn't just delay a flight. It grounded an entire airline and exposed a corruption scandal that would shake the industry. Buckle up. The turbulence starts now. The fluorescent lights of Terminal 4 hummed with the frantic energy of a Friday evening rush. Passengers jostled for charging ports, toddlers screamed over spilled juice, and the public address system chimed with an endless stream of delays. Captain Nia Cross adjusted the epaulets on her shoulders, the 4 gold stripes gleaming against the deep navy fabric of her blazer. She pulled her flight bag closer, her grip tightening on the handle. She was tired, but she wasn't done. This was the final leg. Flight 909 from Chicago to London. It was a flagship route for AeroVantage Airlines, a carrier that had recently come under fire for slipping safety standards. Nia wasn't just flying the bird tonight. She was flying Ghost. Her name wasn't on the passenger manifest in the usual way, and the crew had no idea she was coming. She was a senior Czech airman, essentially the boss of bosses, sent by corporate to conduct a line check, a surprise evaluation of the cockpit and cabin crew. Rumors of pencil-whipping maintenance logs and skipping pre-flight checklists had reached the upper echelons, and Nia was the hammer they were dropping. She approached the jet bridge door, walking with the brisk, confident stride of someone who had spent 20 years in aviation. She reached for the keypad to punch in the crew code. "Whoa, whoa, hold it right there." The voice was nasally and dripping with condescension. Nia paused her hand, hovering inches from the keypad. She turned to see the gate agent, a man named Greg, according to his slightly crooked name tag. Greg was leaning over his podium, chewing gum, aggressively looking her up and down with a sneer that curled his lip. "Can I help you, sir?" Nia asked, her voice calm, professionally modulated. "You can help me by stepping away from the secure door," Greg said, snapping his gum. He pointed a pen at her. "That door is for authorized flight personnel only. Passengers board in 20 minutes. Go sit down." Nia blinked, momentarily confused. She looked down at her uniform, the distinct double-breasted cut, the gold wings pinned above her left pocket, the heavy ID lanyard around her neck. "I am flight personnel," she said, tapping her badge. "I'm Captain Cross. I'm commanding this flight." Greg let out a short, barking laugh. He looked at his colleague, a younger woman typing furiously at the next terminal, and rolled his eyes. "You hear that, Cindy, she's the captain?" "Right." He turned back to Nia, his expression hardening. "Look, lady, it's Halloween next month. You're a little early for the dress-up party. We get this all the time, fanatics trying to sneak into the cockpit for a selfie. Not happening on my watch. Back off." Nia felt the heat rise in her neck, but she kept her face stone cold. This wasn't the first time. It rarely was. Being a black woman in the cockpit meant she had to be twice as good to get half the respect, but usually the uniform did the talking. Today, apparently, Greg was deaf. "This isn't a costume," Nia said, stepping closer, her voice dropping an octave, becoming steel. "I am Captain Nia Cross, employee ID 4922 Alpha. If you check your crew manifest, you will see my name listed as Pilot in Command. Now I have pre-flight checks to complete. Open the door." Greg didn't check the computer. He didn't even glance at the screen. He crossed his arms over his chest, physically blocking the path to the scanner. "I don't need to check anything," Greg spat. "I know the crew. I know Captain Miller. He flies this route. You look like you got that jacket at a surplus store. You're disrupting a federal flight operation. If you don't walk away to the food court right now, I'm calling security." "Captain Miller called in sick 2 hours ago," Naya corrected him, her patience thinning. "I was the reserve called in. Check the system." "I'm done asking." Greg reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we got a 1090 at gate 42. Impersonator attempting to breach the jet bridge. Send PD." Nia took a deep breath. She could feel the eyes of the passengers in the waiting area burning into her back. Phones were already coming out. People were recording. Good. "You are making a mistake that will cost you your career," Nia stated, pulling her phone from her pocket. "I'm going to call the chief pilot." "Call the Pope for all I care," Greg scoffed. "You aren't getting on this plane." At that moment, the jet bridge door opened from the inside. A tall, silver-haired man in a flight attendant's uniform stepped out. It was Bradley, the lead flight attendant, the purser. Naya recognized him from a file she'd read earlier. Bradley had 3 HR complaints against him for insubordination, yet he was still flying. "What is the problem out here, Greg?" Bradley demanded, smoothing his tie. "We're trying to prep the cabin. This woman is trying to force her way in." Greg gestured to Nia. "Claims she's the pilot." Bradley turned to Nia. His eyes raked over her, lingering on her natural hair and the gold stripes on her sleeves. He didn't look at her badge. He looked at her face, and a look of pure disgust washed over him. "You've got to be kidding me." Bradley sighed, shaking his head. "Honey, the stewardess interview is down the hall in HR, and even then you're out of uniform. We don't wear double-breasted jackets." "I am not a flight attendant," Naya said, enunciating every word. "I am the captain, and you are Bradley Hurst. I suggest you let me board, or you will be removed from this flight." Bradley laughed, a cruel, cold sound. "Removed by who you listen. I don't know what affirmative action program you think you're riding on, but AeroVantage doesn't let just anyone fly a 777. You're fraudulent. I can spot a fake ID a mile away." He turned to Greg. "Keep her out. I'm locking the door from the inside. If she touches the handle, press charges." The door slammed shut in Nia's face. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. The murmurs in the gate area grew louder. A heavy-set man in a business suit stood up, his face red. "Hey, if she says she's the pilot, maybe you should check," he yelled at Greg. "Sit down, sir," Greg shouted back, his power trip now in full swing. "This is a security matter." Naya didn't scream. She didn't pound on the door. She knew the protocol. If she acted emotional or aggressive, they would use it against her. They would say she was unstable. She had to be the calmest person in the room, even while her blood was boiling. She stepped back to the window, looking out at the tarmac. The massive Boeing 777 sat there, a beast of engineering waiting for its master. The ground crew was loading luggage. They had no idea that the person with the keys was being held hostage by a gate agent with a god complex. 2 airport police officers, Officers Miller and Kowalski, jogged up the concourse, their hands resting on their belts. Greg lit up like a Christmas tree, pointing an accusatory finger at Naya. "That's her." She tried to rush the door. She threatened the crew. Greg lied effortlessly, loud enough for the passengers to hear. Officer Miller the older of the two approached Nia. "Ma'am, step away from the podium. Put your bag down." "Officer," Nia said, holding her hands visible and open. "My name is Captain Nia Cross. I am the pilot for this flight. This agent has refused to check my credentials and has denied me entry to my aircraft." "She's lying," Greg interjected. "The lead attendant, Bradley, just ID'd her as a fake. Said she's not on the crew list." Officer Miller looked at Nia. He saw the uniform. It looked real. But prejudice is a powerful blinder. He saw a black woman in a position of authority, and his brain, influenced by Greg's panic, defaulted to suspicion. "Ma'am, let me see your ID," Miller said sternly. Nia handed over her company badge and her FAA Airman certificate. Miller looked at it. It had her photo. It had the holograms. "It looks real," Kowalski muttered, looking over Miller's shoulder. "Fake IDs are good these days," Greg insisted. "Look, Captain Miller is the pilot. I know him. This chick is probably some activist trying to make a scene. Just cuff her and get her out of here so we can board. We're already 10 minutes behind." "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us to the station to verify these," Miller said, handing the ID back but grabbing her arm. "If I leave this gate," Nia said, her voice dropping to a whisper that carried the weight of a judge's gavel, "this flight is cancelled. There is no other relief pilot available. You will be responsible for stranding 300 passengers. And when my identity is verified, which will take one phone call to the tower, you will have to explain to the mayor why you arrested a senior Czech airman on duty." Miller hesitated. He let go of her arm. "Call it in," Nia challenged him. "Call dispatch. Ask who is flying flight 909. Miller looked at Greg, then at Nia. He clicked his radio. "Central, this is Miller at gate 42. Can you patch me through to AeroVantage Ops? I need to verify a pilot." Greg rolled his eyes. "You're wasting time. Bradley is inside prepping the cabin. He knows the crew." "Just wait," Miller said, holding up a hand. Seconds ticked by. The static on the radio crackled. Then a voice came through loud and clear. "Ops here." "Go ahead." "Yeah, I have a female individual here identifying as Captain Nia Cross. Claims she's the pilot for 909. We have a gate agent claiming she's an imposter." There was a pause on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Then the voice on the radio changed tone completely. It wasn't the dispatcher anymore. It was a deep, frantic baritone. "Officer, this is Director of Flight Operations, Samuel West. Did you say Nia Cross is at the gate?" "Yes, sir. We have her detained." "Detained?" West's voice cracked with panic. "You have the regional chief pilot detained. That is not just the pilot, that is the woman who signs my paychecks. Put her on the phone, now!" The color drained from Greg's face. It happened instantly, like someone pulled a plug. His jaw went slack, the gum falling out of his mouth. Officer Miller's eyes widened. He immediately handed the radio to Nia, stepping back as if she were radioactive. Nia took the radio. She didn't look at Miller. She stared directly at Greg. "Sam," she said into the radio. "Nia." "Good Lord, I am so sorry. We saw the gate hold on the system. We didn't know." "Sam," Nia cut him off. "I'm standing at gate 42. Gate agent Greg Thompson and lead flight attendant Bradley Hurst have denied me entry. They have accused me of fraud. They have called the police on me. And Bradley has locked the jet bridge door. I'll call the station manager. I'll get that door open in 10 seconds. "No," Nia said. "You won't." The crowd went silent. Even the crying toddler seemed to stop. "Cancel the flight, Sam," Nia said. Greg let out a strangled squeak. "What? Cancel the flight?" Naya repeated, her eyes never leaving Greg's terrified face. "I am declaring this crew unfit for duty due to gross negligence and security violations, and I am grounding this aircraft. If the gate agent and the lead flight attendant cannot identify a captain because of their own bias, they cannot be trusted to identify a security threat. This plane does not fly." "Naya, the costs. That's a transatlantic flight," Sam pleaded. "It's grounded, Sam. Or do I need to call the FAA administrator directly? I have him on speed dial." "Okay. Grounding 909. Sending a cancellation notice now." Naya handed the radio back to a stunned Officer Miller. The digital board behind the desk flickered. The bright green on-time status blinked once, twice, and then turned a harsh, unforgiving red. Cancelled. A collective gasp went through the terminal. Then the shouting started. But Nia didn't flinch. She picked up her bag. "Officer Miller," she said coolly, "I'd like to file a formal complaint for harassment, and I want that door opened. I have an inspection to finish. There are violations on that plane that Bradley was trying to hide, and I'm going to find every single one of them." She turned to Greg, who was trembling behind his podium. "You wanted to see my ID, Greg?" She leaned in close. "You're going to be seeing a lot of it in court." Naya turned back to the jet bridge door just as it opened. Bradley stood there, smiling smugly, holding a coffee. "Did the cops take the trash out?" He stopped. He saw the police standing down. He saw Greg hyperventilating. He saw the red "cancelled" sign. And he saw Nia Cross, smiling a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hello, Bradley," she said. "Pack your bags. You're done." The jet bridge was cold, a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere of the terminal. Bradley Hurst stood frozen, his hand still gripping the styrofoam coffee cup, the steam rising in weak, dissipating spirals. The smug grin that had plastered his face moments ago was beginning to crack, fracturing under the weight of Naya's icy declaration. You're joking," Bradley stammered, his eyes darting to the police officers standing a few feet behind Nia. "This is some kind of prank, right? A test." Nia didn't answer him. She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his with deliberate indifference. She stepped onto the threshold of the aircraft, the familiar smell of recycled air and upholstery hitting her. It was a smell she usually loved, the scent of her office, but today it smelled like corruption. "Captain Cross, wait!" Bradley scrambled after her, blocking the narrow aisle of the business-class cabin. "You can't just barge in here. The first officer is doing his pre-flight. You're disrupting the flow." Nia stopped and turned slowly. She looked at Bradley's nameplate, then up to his eyes. They were bloodshot. Subtle but there. And then she smelled it. Beneath the scent of strong peppermint gum and expensive cologne, there was the faint, sickly sweet tang of vodka. "Step aside, Bradley," Nia said, her voice low. "No." Bradley snapped, regaining a shred of his arrogance. "I am the purser on this vessel. Until the captain arrives, I am in charge of the cabin. You are a disruptive passenger who happens to have a uniform. Get off my plane." Nia reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She hit the record button and held it up. "State your name and refusal to allow a federal inspection," Nia said calmly. Bradley swatted at the phone. "Put that away. Assault," Nia noted verbally for the recording. "Interference with a flight crew member." "I didn't touch you," Bradley shrieked. "Officer Miller," Nia called out, not turning around. The two officers appeared in the doorway of the plane. "Yes, Captain." "Breathalyzer," Nia commanded. "Immediately. I have reasonable suspicion that the lead flight attendant is under the influence of alcohol while on duty." Bradley went pale. That's a lie. I had mouthwash. Then you have nothing to worry about, Naya said. Officers secure him. Do not let him enter the galley. He might try to dispose of containers. As the officers moved in, grabbing a protesting Bradley by the arms, Naya turned her attention to the cockpit. The door was open. She stepped inside the flight deck, the nerve center of the Boeing 777. Sitting in the right-hand seat was the first officer. He looked young, barely 30. His name tag read Kyle Bennett. He was staring at the commotion in the cabin with wide, terrified eyes. When he saw Nia enter, saw the 4 stripes, the Czech airman insignia, he practically jumped out of his skin. Captain, Kyle stammered, scrambling to unbuckle his seatbelt to stand up. Sit down, Bennett, Nia said, dropping her flight bag. She didn't offer a handshake. She walked around the pilot's seat and looked at the overhead panel. Then she looked at the center console. Where is the tech log? She asked. Kyle swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. It's right there, ma'am. Nia picked up the heavy binder containing the aircraft's maintenance history. She flipped to the current date. Her eyes narrowed. The log is signed, Nia said, her voice dangerously quiet. Captain Miller's signature is here, and so is yours. Yes, ma'am, Kyle said, sweating. He signed it before he called in sick. We did the pre-flight together earlier. You did the pre-flight 4 hours ago, Nia asked, and you found nothing wrong. No, ma'am. Plane is green. Good to go. Nia closed the book with a heavy thud. She leaned over the center console and tapped the glass of the backup artificial horizon, a critical standby instrument. Why is there a piece of black tape on the corner of this instrument, Kyle? Kyle froze. I don't know. Nia peeled the small, inconspicuous piece of electrical tape back. Underneath a tiny red indicator light was glowing. Fail. The standby instrument is dead, Nia said. That is a no-go item for a transatlantic flight. You cannot fly over the ocean without a working backup horizon. Did you know this? Kyle looked at his lap. Captain Miller said... He said it was just a sensor glitch. He said maintenance takes 6 hours to swap it out, and we'd lose the slot. He said to just... ignore it. And you signed the log? He told me to... Kyle burst out, tears forming in his eyes. He said if I didn't play ball, he'd tank my review. I'm on probation, Captain. I need this job. Bradley said they do it all the time. He said they manage the maintenance to keep the on-time bonuses. Nia looked at the young pilot with a mixture of pity and fury. So you were going to fly 300 people across the Atlantic at night with a known failure in your backup navigation systems just to save the company a delay statistic. Kyle didn't answer. He just put his head in his hands. And Bradley, Nia asked. What is his part in this? Bradley runs the show, Kyle whispered. He and Captain Miller, they run this route like it's their private jet. Bradley brings things, packages, in the galley carts. That's why he didn't want you on board. He didn't want a stranger checking the galleys. Nia felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just negligence. This was a crime ring. Stay here, Kyle, Nia ordered. Don't touch anything. If you touch a single switch, I will personally strip your license before the sun goes down. Nia stormed out of the cockpit. The cabin was in chaos. The other flight attendants were huddled in the corner, looking terrified. Bradley was currently shouting at Officer Miller, who was trying to handcuff him. You can't do this. I know the VP of Operations, Bradley screamed. Nia walked up to the galley carts, the metal containers that held the food and duty-free items. They were sealed with plastic tags. Officer Kowalski, Nia said. I need you to witness this. What are we looking for, Captain? The officer asked. Nia pointed to the bottom cart, the one usually reserved for trash or spare linens. "This seal looks tampered with. It's been glued back together." She grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. Inside there were no linens. There were 4 heavy black duffel bags shoved tightly into the compartment. Nia unzipped the nearest one. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't money. It was high-end electronics. Hundreds of latest generation smartphones, still in their boxes, likely stolen or grey market being smuggled into London to avoid taxes. Thousands of dollars in unreported cargo. Bradley stopped shouting. He stared at the open cart, his face draining of all color until he looked like a wax figure. "Well, Bradley," Nia said, crossing her arms, "I think we found the real reason you didn't want to check airmen on board. It wasn't about my uniform. It was about your cargo." She turned to Officer Miller. "Officer, I'd like to amend my statement. We're not just dealing with an intoxicated crew member. We have a smuggling operation using a commercial airliner." The silence in the cabin was deafening, broken only by the click of the handcuffs tightening around Bradley's wrists. The walk back up the jet bridge felt like a funeral procession, but instead of a body, they were carrying the career of Bradley Hurst. Officer Miller gripped Bradley's arm tightly. The flight attendant's pristine uniform was now rumpled his tie, askew his face a mask of sweating terror. Behind them, Officer Kowalski escorted a weeping Kyle Bennett. Nia brought up the rear, carrying the flight logbook and the evidence bags. She walked with the weight of the entire aviation industry on her shoulders. She was angry, yes, but mostly she was exhausted. This was why safety cultures failed. Not because of mechanics or weather, but because of greed and ego. When they emerged back into the terminal at Gate 42, the scene was pandemonium. The cancellation had turned the waiting area into a riot zone. Passengers were surrounding the podium, screaming at Greg, who looked like he was about to faint. "I have a connection in London. My daughter is getting married. Who is going to pay for my hotel?" Greg was hiding behind his computer monitor, holding his hands up. Please, I don't know anything. The pilot just cancelled it." "The pilot didn't just cancel it," a voice boomed over the crowd. The crowd quieted down, turning to see Nia standing at the gate door. She stood tall, flanked by the police and the arrested crew members. The sight of the handcuffs silenced the room instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nia said, her voice projecting without a microphone, trained by years of shouting over jet engines. "I am Captain Cross. I am the one who grounded this flight." "Why?" a man shouted from the back. "We've been waiting 2 hours." "Because," Nia said, pointing to the crew being led away, "this aircraft was not safe. The flight deck was compromised by negligence, and the cabin was compromised by criminal activity. I know you are angry. I know you are tired. But I would rather you be angry on the ground than a tragedy in the news." A hush fell over the crowd. The reality of the handcuffs and the criminal activity comment sank in. Suddenly, the glass doors of the terminal entrance slid open. A woman in a sharp grey power suit, flanked by 2 men in suits, marched toward the gate. It was Linda Graves, the station manager for AeroVantage. She looked furious. "Captain Cross," Linda shouted, her heels clicking aggressively on the linoleum. "What on earth is going on here? You have grounded a flagship route. Do you have any idea what this costs the airline?" Linda ignored the police. She ignored the handcuffed Bradley. She zeroed in on Nia, her eyes blazing with corporate fury. "You arrive unannounced, you cause a scene with my gate agents, and now you cancel a flight. You are way out of your lane, Nia. This is a PR nightmare." Nia didn't flinch. She watched Linda storm up to her. "Linda," Nia said calmly, "good of you to join us. Did you know your lead flight attendant was running a smuggling ring out of the aft galley? Linda froze. What? And did you know? Nia continued, raising her voice slightly so the passengers could hear that the first officer was coerced into signing a legal document stating the plane was safe, when in fact the backup navigation system is dead. That's an internal maintenance issue, Linda hissed, lowering her voice. We could have fixed that with a deferral. You didn't need to involve the police. You didn't need to make a spectacle. A deferral requires a working part, Linda. They didn't have one. They were going to fly anyway. Nia stepped closer to the manager. And regarding the spectacle, your gate agent, Greg, called the police on me. He denied a chief check airman access to the aircraft because he didn't believe a black woman could be the captain. Is that also an internal issue? Linda's eyes darted to the passengers. Dozens of phones were recording. She realized too late that she was losing the narrative. We don't tolerate discrimination, Linda stammered, falling back on corporate speak. But Nia, you have to understand the pressure we are under. You can't just arrest the crew. I didn't arrest them, Nia said. The law did. Now I suggest you get on the phone with corporate, because I am declaring an immediate safety stand-down for this entire hub. No AeroVantage planes leave this airport until every single logbook is audited. You can't do that, Linda gasped. That's dozens of flights, millions of dollars. I just did, Nia said. It's my authority under FAA Regulation 119. Management has shown a pattern of disregarding safety for profit. Until I am satisfied that your gate agents aren't blocking pilots and your crews aren't flying broken planes, AeroVantage is closed for business in Chicago. The crowd of passengers who had been hostile moments ago began to murmur. Then someone started clapping. It was the heavy-set man from earlier. Then a woman joined in. Soon the entire gate area was applauding. They realized that this woman wasn't the villain. She was the only thing standing between them and a disaster. Linda looked around, realizing she was defeated. She glared at Nia. This isn't over, Cross. You've just made a lot of powerful enemies. The union won't like this. The board won't like this. I don't work for the board, Linda, Nia said, picking up her bag again. I work for the passengers, and right now I'm going to find them a safe plane, even if I have to fly it myself. She turned to Greg, who was still cowering at the podium. Greg, she said, rebook these passengers on partner airlines, full refunds, meal vouchers. And if you roll your eyes at one single customer, I will have your badge before you can blink. Do we understand each other? Greg nodded rapidly, unable to speak. Nia turned and walked toward the police station to file her report. The applause of the passengers following her down the concourse. But as she walked, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. You should have stayed in the cockpit. You don't know who you're messing with. Watch your back. Nia stared at the screen. The smuggling ring wasn't just Bradley. He was just a mule. The rot went deeper, and she had just kicked the hornet's nest. The interrogation room at the airport police substation was stark smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Nia sat on one side of the metal table, her posture perfect, despite having been awake for 18 hours. Across from her sat Detective Harrigan, a weary man with a loose tie and a notepad full of scribbles. You realized you kicked a hornet's nest the size of a jet engine, right, Captain? Harrigan asked, tapping his pen on the table. I realized I stopped a felony in progress and prevented a likely hull loss over the Atlantic. Nia replied sharply. Have you cracked Bradley yet? Harrigan sighed and leaned back. "The flight attendant." He folded like a cheap lawn chair. The second we mentioned federal prison time for trafficking, he started singing. "But that's the problem, Captain. The tune he's singing. It's ugly." Harrigan opened a folder and slid a photo across the table. It was a grainy surveillance shot of a man in a dark suit exchanging a briefcase with Bradley in the staff parking lot. Bradley claims the smuggling ring isn't just him. He says he was recruited. They use the crew to move high-value stolen tech components, microchips, prototypes, things that don't show up on X-rays if you pack them right. But here is the kicker. Bradley says he didn't want to fly tonight. He knew the backup horizon was busted. He tried to call in sick. Naya frowned. So why was he there? Because he was told if he didn't fly the inventory, wouldn't get to London. And the people waiting for it aren't the kind you say no to. He claims he was forced by someone in upper management to override the safety protocols. Someone who makes sure the special cargo gets priority over maintenance. Naya felt a cold knot in her stomach. Who is the contact? Harrigan pointed to the ceiling. He gave us a name. Charles Sterling. Nia froze. Charles Sterling wasn't just a manager. He was the vice president of logistics for AeroVantage. He was untouchable. He was the man who signed off on the budget cuts, the man who laid off the senior mechanics, the man who implemented the fast turn policy that punished crews for delays. Sterling protects the operation, Harrigan explained. He ensures the smugglers are on the right flights. He ensures the gate agents like your friend Greg are instructed to harass anyone who isn't in the club. That's why Greg stopped you. He wasn't just being racist, though he certainly is that. He was briefed to keep unpredictable elements off Flight 909. You were an unpredictable element. So the racism was the weapon, Nia realized, but the motive was greed. Exactly. And now, Captain, you are a problem. Sterling knows you grounded the flight. He knows you have the logs. That text message you got. We traced the burner. It pinged off a tower right near the AeroVantage corporate offices. Naya stood up. I need to go to the ops center. I need to secure the digital records before Sterling wipes the servers. Captain, I can't let you do that, Harrigan warned. It's dangerous. These guys are looking at 20 years. They're desperate. I am a Czech airman, Naya said, straightening her blazer. My job is to ensure the integrity of the airline. If I don't pull those maintenance release forms now, they will replace them with forged ones by morning. I'm going. She walked out of the station. The terminal was quieter now, the midnight lull setting in. She headed toward the operations tower, the nerve center of the airport. As she entered the elevator to the 4th floor, the doors began to close. Suddenly, a hand shot out, blocking the sensor. The doors bounced back open. Linda Graves, the station manager, stepped in, but she wasn't alone. Behind her was a man Naya recognized from company newsletters, Charles Sterling. He was taller in person, wearing a suit that cost more than Naya's car. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, like a parent addressing a toddler. Captain Cross, Sterling said smoothly, as the elevator doors slid shut, sealing the three of them in the metal box. Just the woman I wanted to see. Nia moved to the corner, putting her back against the wall. She subtly reached into her pocket, tapping the record button on her phone again. Vice President Sterling. Naya nodded. I assume you're here to thank me for catching a smuggler. Sterling chuckled dryly. I'm here to offer you a promotion, Nia. We need a new director of safety in the Hong Kong office. It comes with a triple salary, a housing allowance, and this is the best part, an immediate departure. Tonight. I'm not interested in Hong Kong, Nia said. You should be, Linda chimed in her voice, trembling slightly. She looked terrified of Sterling. "Nia, take the deal. Please." "And if I don't?" Nia asked, locking eyes with Sterling. Sterling's smile vanished. The mask dropped. "Then we release the file we have on you. We have reports, falsified of course, but convincing that you were unstable, that you assaulted Greg, that you were drinking before the flight. We have witnesses on the payroll who will swear to it. You'll never fly again. You'll be lucky to drive a bus." "You're threatening a whistleblower?" Nia asked. "I'm managing risk." Sterling stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You grounded a plane, costing me $500,000. You exposed an arrangement that generates 10 times that. You are a loose thread, Captain Cross. And I have scissors." The elevator chimed. "Floor 4. Nia looked at Sterling, then at Linda. She saw the fear in Linda's eyes, but the cold malice in Sterling's. "You forgot one thing, Charles," Nia said softly. "What's that?" "I don't just fly the plane," Nia said, holding up her phone, which showed the recording timer running. "I record the black box data." She hit send on the screen. "I just emailed this audio file to the FAA administrator and the FBI. Cloud upload complete." Sterling lunged for the phone. "You witch!" Nia was faster. She utilized a self-defense move she'd learned years ago, sidestepping his grab and shoving him hard against the elevator wall. He crumpled, shocked that a subordinate physically fought back. The elevator doors opened. Standing there wasn't an empty hallway. It was Sam West, the ops director, flanked by 2 FBI agents. "Sam," Sterling gasped, straightening his tie. "Thank God. This woman is crazy. Arrest her." Sam West looked at Sterling with pure contempt. "Sorry, Charles. I heard the live stream." "Live stream?" Sterling paled. Nia smiled. "I didn't just record it. I was live on my private social channel. 4,000 pilots just watched you try to blackmail me." Sterling looked at the phone in Nia's hand, then at the FBI agents. "Charles Sterling," one of the agents said, stepping forward. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding interstate trafficking and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." As the cuffs clicked onto Sterling's wrists, Nia looked at Linda. I didn't know about the smuggling." "Nia, I swear," Linda cried. "I just thought it was about cutting costs." "Ignorance isn't a defense, Linda," Nia said coldly. "You let a racist gate agent block a captain because it suited your boss's agenda. You're just as guilty." The next morning, the sun rose over Chicago O'Hare, but the storm was just beginning for AeroVantage Airlines. Nia hadn't slept. She sat in a conference room at the airport hotel, surrounded by union representatives and a team of federal investigators. On the large TV screen on the wall, the news was playing. Shocking viral video showing Captain Nia Cross being denied entry to her own aircraft has sparked a nationwide outrage. The hashtag #LetHerFly is trending #1 globally. But the story has taken a darker turn, with allegations of a massive smuggling ring involving senior airline executives. The screen cut to footage of Greg the gate agent. He wasn't at his podium anymore. He was being escorted out of the terminal by airport security, shielding his face from a swarm of paparazzi. Greg Thompson, the agent who initiated the incident, has been terminated effectively immediately, the reporter said. Internet sleuths uncovered a history of discriminatory posts on his social media, leading to a permanent ban from working in any TSA secure area. He is also facing charges for filing a false police report. Nia took a sip of water. It was the first hard karma hit. Greg wasn't just fired. He was blacklisted. In the aviation world, if you lose your security clearance, you are done. He would never work at an airport again. But the bigger fish was frying now. The door to the conference room opened. A frantic-looking man in a suit walked in. It was the CEO of AeroVantage, Mr. Holloway. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Captain Cross," Holloway said, extending a hand that shook slightly. "Please. We need to talk. We can settle this. A settlement, 10 million. We just need you to issue a statement saying the safety culture is improving." Naya didn't shake his hand. She looked at the union rep, then back at Holloway. "Mr. Holloway," Naya said, "your vice president is in federal custody. Your lead flight attendant is looking at 10 years. Your Chicago station manager is being investigated for aiding and abetting. And you want me to say things are improving?" "The stock price dropped 40% this morning," Holloway pleaded. "If this continues, we go under. Think of the jobs." "I am thinking of the jobs," Naya said calmly. "I'm thinking of the pilots you pressured to fly broken jets. I'm thinking of the mechanics you fired to save money, which allowed Sterling to smuggle his goods. You built a house of cards on the backs of your employees, and you used prejudice as a shield to keep people from asking questions." She stood up. "I won't sign your statement, but I will make a deal." "Anything," Holloway said. "One independent safety audit of the entire fleet, overseen by a committee I select. 2 immediate restitution for every passenger on Flight 909. 3. You publicly apologize. Not a press release. A live press conference. Today. And you apologize specifically to me and to every pilot of color you've marginalized." Holloway swallowed hard. It was humiliation. It was an admission of total failure. "And if I refuse, then I release part 2 of the audio." Naya bluffed. She didn't have a part 2, but Holloway didn't know that. "The part where Sterling mentions your knowledge of the budget cuts." Holloway closed his eyes. He was beaten. Okay, we'll do it." 3 hours later. The press conference was held in the main atrium of the airport. Hundreds of cameras flashed. Holloway stood at the podium looking small. He read the apology, his voice cracking. He admitted to the systemic failures. He admitted that Captain Cross was a hero who saved lives. Then it was Naya's turn to speak. She stepped up to the microphone. The world was watching. She wore her uniform, impeccable as always. "Yesterday," Naya began, her voice ringing out, clear and strong. "I was told I didn't look like a pilot. I was told my ID was fake. I was told to go back to the food court." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Bias is a blinder. It stops you from seeing talent. It stops you from seeing truth. And in this industry, it stops you from seeing danger. Greg Thompson saw a black woman and assumed I was a threat. Bradley Hurst saw a black woman and assumed I was incompetent. Charles Sterling saw a black woman and assumed I was powerless." She leaned in. "They were all wrong. The uniform doesn't make the pilot. The skills, the integrity, and the courage do. And today the airline is grounded not because of me, but because the truth is finally heavy enough to keep it on the tarmac." As she finished, the terminal erupted. Not just the reporters, but the passengers on the upper levels, the other crews, the TSA agents. They cheered. But the sweetest moment of karma was yet to come. As Naya walked off the stage, she saw Kyle Bennett, the young first officer. He had been released, having turned state's witness against Bradley. He looked ashamed. "Captain," Kyle said, looking at his feet. "I'm sorry. I was weak." "You were," Nia said sternly. "And you will lose your license for a while, Kyle. You'll have to retrain. You'll have to start at the bottom flying cargo in a prop plane in Alaska. But you're young. You can earn your wings back the right way. Or you can quit. It's up to you." Kyle nodded, tears in his eyes. "Thank you for not letting me fly that plane." Naya walked out of the terminal and toward the curb. A black town car was waiting not from the airline, but from the FAA. They needed her in D.C. to testify before Congress. As she waited for the driver to load her bag, she saw a familiar figure on the sidewalk. It was Greg. He was wearing civilian clothes, holding a cardboard box with his personal belongings. He was waiting for the public bus, looking miserable. It started to rain. A luxury SUV pulled up next to him. The window rolled down. It was Bradley out on bail, but wearing an ankle monitor, being picked up by a lawyer. Bradley looked at Greg with pure hatred. "You idiot!" Bradley shouted at Greg from the car. "If you had just let her on the plane, she never would have checked the cargo. You and your big mouth brought us all down." Greg stood there, soaked in the rain, realizing that his own prejudice was the domino that toppled his life. He looked at Naya across the street. Naya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just adjusted her sunglasses, got into the town car, and closed the door. She had a plane to catch, and this time no one was going to stop her. 6 months had passed since the incident at Gate 42, but in the world of aviation, the turbulence was still being felt. The Gate 42 scandal, as the media dubbed it, had become the biggest story of the decade. It wasn't just about a pilot being blocked. It was about the rot that had been allowed to fester behind the security curtain. The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago was packed. Outside, protesters held signs that read, "Wings, have no color, and hatch justice for Nia." Inside, the air was thick with anticipation. Naya sat in the front row, dressed not in her uniform, but in a tailored cream suit. She looked serene, a stark contrast to the man sitting at the defense table. Charles Sterling, the former VP of Logistics, looked like a ghost. He had lost 20 pounds. His expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. Beside him sat Bradley Hurst, who had turned state's evidence in a desperate bid for leniency, though his trembling hands suggested he knew his fate was sealed. Judge Arthur Pendleton, a man known for his zero-tolerance policy on corporate corruption, adjusted his glasses and looked down at the defendants. "In my 30 years on the bench," Judge Pendleton began, his voice echoing in the silent room, "I have seen greed. I have seen negligence. But rarely have I seen such a calculated combination of the two weaponized by bigotry to silence a safety professional." He turned his gaze to Sterling. "Sterling, you treated a commercial airliner like your personal cargo van. You endangered 300 lives to move stolen microchips. And when caught, you attempted to destroy the career of an exemplary pilot. The jury has found you guilty on all 12 counts, including racketeering and conspiracy to endanger an aircraft." Sterling stood up, his lawyer trying to pull him back down. "It was business. Everyone cuts corners." "Not with human lives," the judge snapped. "Charles Sterling, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel banged. A gasp went through the room. Sterling's knees buckled, and he had to be held up by the marshals. Then the judge turned to Bradley. "Mr. Hurst, you were a pawn, yes, but you were a willing one. You bullied your crew, you intimidated a young pilot, and you allowed prejudice to guide your actions at that gate. 10 years. As Bradley was led away, weeping, Naya didn't feel joy. She felt relief. The cancer had been cut out, but the karma wasn't done yet. Outside the courthouse, the media swarm was waiting. But Naya walked past them, flanked by her new security detail. She had a meeting to get to. She drove to the AeroVantage headquarters. The logo on the building was being painted over. The board of directors, in a desperate attempt to save the company from bankruptcy, had been forced to rebrand. But more importantly, part of the settlement Naya had negotiated included a restructuring of the leadership. She walked into the executive boardroom, the same room where she used to be, just a number on a payroll sheet. The board members stood up as she entered. "Captain Cross," the interim CEO said, looking nervous. "Thank you for coming." "I'm not here to chat," Naya said, placing a thick folder on the table. "This is the new safety protocol mandate. It requires double-blind audits for every flight whistleblower, protection for all ground staff, and a diversity oversight committee for gate operations." This is very expensive, Naya," one board member muttered. "It's cheaper than a lawsuit," Naya replied coolly. "And it's cheaper than a crash. You have two choices. Adopt the mandate, and I stay on as the new Senior Vice President of Safety and Flight Operations, or I walk and I take my story to the Senate hearing next week and tell them you're still resisting change." The room went silent. They knew she held all the cards. She wasn't just a pilot anymore. She was the industry standard. "We accept," the CEO said quickly. Naya nodded. "Good. One more thing. I want the hiring files for the last 5 years reopened. Anyone who was rejected for culture fit gets a second interview. Today." As Naya left the building, she decided to make one stop before going home. She drove to a small, run-down strip mall on the outskirts of the city. There was a budget courier service there, a place that shipped cheap packages. Through the window, she saw him. Greg. The former gate agent was wearing a stained polo shirt, sweating as he taped up boxes. He looked miserable. He was shouting at a customer about the price of stamps, his face red. Naya parked her car and watched for a moment. She didn't go in. She didn't need to. Seeing him there, stripping of his power, stripped of his ability to ruin anyone's day but his own, was enough. He looked up, saw her car, and froze. He recognized her instantly. The shame that washed over his face was more satisfying than any shout could be. Naya put the car in drive and pulled away. She had a flight to catch, not as a captain this time, but as a passenger. She was flying to D.C. to watch the president sign the Cross Act, a new law named after her that protected airline crews from retaliation. She arrived at the airport. As she walked to the gate, Gate 42, the very same one, she saw the new agent. A young Hispanic woman was working the podium. She was smiling, checking IDs efficiently. When Naya approached, the agent looked up. Her eyes went wide. "Captain Cross," the agent gasped. "Just Nia today." She smiled, handing over her boarding pass. The agent took the pass, then looked at Naya with tears in her eyes. "I just want you to know, I applied for this job because of you. I watched your video. You stood your ground. You made it safe for us." Naya felt a lump in her throat. This was the real victory. Not the jail sentences, not the promotion. It was this. "Keep the gate safe," Nia said softly. "I will, Captain. Always." Nia walked down the jet bridge. The door was open. The flight attendant at the door, a man named David, saw her and immediately stood straighter. "Welcome aboard, Captain Cross," he said with genuine respect. "It's an honor to have you with us." Nia stepped onto the plane. She glanced at the cockpit. The door was open. The pilot, a man she didn't know, turned and gave her a sharp salute. She found her seat in 1A. She looked out the window at the tarmac, at the busy world of baggage carts and fuel trucks. It was a chaotic, noisy, beautiful world. And finally, it was a little bit fairer. The engines roared to life. The plane pushed back. Nia Cross closed her eyes and smiled. The turbulence was over. It was clear skies from here on out. In a world that often judges a book by its cover, Captain Nia Cross proved that the content of your character and the credentials in your pocket are what truly matter. Her story isn't just about aviation. It's a reminder that when you stand firm in your truth, you don't just clear the path for yourself, you clear it for everyone coming behind you. The corrupt fell, the prejudiced were silenced, and competence reigned supreme. Justice may have been delayed at Gate 42, but it arrived right on time. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please smash that like button and share this video. It helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment of the drama. What would you have done if you were Captain Cross? Let me know in the comments below.